This video is an introduction to using the Watershed Health Assessment Framework for exploring spatial context. Let's start by clicking here on the Explore icon and following through here to explore watershed health using the mapping interface. So we're going to focus our attention on Whitewater State Park, but before we zoom to that location, I'm going to come over here and add features and add the boundaries for those state parks and recreation areas. So now let's go ahead and zoom to that location. And given that this is a watershed framework, we are going to think first about the hydrologic context for Whitewater State Park. So we're going to think about watersheds and what contributes to this particular location on the landscape. And you'll note as I hovered over here, you can see that the boundary is changing and showing you what major watershed contributes to or contains Whitewater State Park. Also, the name for that major watershed is displaying up here. So as you move, you'll see that up here you're in the Zumbro River major watershed, or down here is the Root, but this particular major watershed is the Mississippi River Winona. And also, if you want more information about how we define watersheds and talk about them inside of this framework, this is a good place to go to get a little more background on how those terms are used. But just quickly, major watersheds are not necessarily true watersheds, but are an administrative unit. Catchments are small hydrologic delineations, so sub-watersheds. And true watersheds are the contributing area that is hydrologically connected to a selected catchment on the landscape. You can explore that further on your own, but that's a quick introduction. So let's think about what might be connected to this particular unit that you may be charged with managing or just interested in. So let's see, by using this upstream tool and turning on the DNR catchments, we can look at what contributes overland flow to this particular location on the landscape. So if you click here, and this is the upstream tool, so let me do that again. And it may take it a minute to find that. There we go. You'll see these tools pop up here that you can use alongside that upstream delineation. So this one will zoom you to that upstream contributing area. This one will clear the fill and give you just the boundary. And this one would remove that boundary and allow you to select a new upstream area. But let's leave that fill on for a minute and do some additional exploration about this upstream contributing area. One way to do that is to come over here and click on this Explore button. And you go to What's Upstream. And it immediately gives you a land use pie chart, which can be pretty interesting. It gives you these percentages of 56% cultivated, 40% perennial, 4.5% other land cover. You might want to look at that in a little more detail. Let's take that fill off, and you'll note that you can zoom in, and those percentages seem to fall in line with what you see in the air photo. And as you zoom in, you'll get continuously more detailed aerial photography, and you see that most of that perennial cover seems to actually be falling within the boundaries of the park, and much of the cultivated land then is outside of that, as would probably be expected. So let's zoom back out to that entire contributing area. So that's a little bit about the land that is contributing flow to the park that you might want to know about when you're concerned about issues inside Whitewater State Park. Let's also think about its connection to those political boundaries, communities and counties and so forth. Here in the summary piece about the catchment that we selected, you can find out how large that upstream area is, the number of units animal units upstream, and here it notes that there are no cities or communities that fall within that upstream area, but we do know that there are cities near the park, and there are it falls very near a county boundary. So let's take a quick look at that. Whitewater falls in Winona County, but it's right on the border with Olmsted, not very far from Wabasha County. And additionally, even though these communities are not within that upstream contributing area, they are definitely close enough to be part of the landscape and important players in how you might manage the park and park users and so forth. And if you zoom out a little further, and think about how close you really are to Winona and some of those other communities. So both that hydrologic and political boundaries there. And there's one more kind of boundary I want to turn on quickly, and that's these ecological subsections. And you can think about the pattern of habitats that are in the vicinity of the park. And here you see that the park itself is kind of falling in one type of ecological subsection, and much of the contributing area is in another. And if you want to know what those colors mean, you open the legend here, and you'll see that those upland areas are mostly in the Rochester Plateau, and the park itself falls in this Blufflands subsection. If you want to see how those display across the state, you can go back out by using this return to full state view and see how those subsections are distributed across Minnesota. And again, you see that you have, let's turn these major watershed boundaries on as well, and you can see the nested nature of these, the way these features are hydrologically connected. So here you have the boundary for the contributing area to the park, so those selected catchments. You have the major watershed that the park falls within, and then those major watersheds together collect into a major river basin. In this case, it's the lower Mississippi in Minnesota. And that gives you a little taste of considering spatial context for Whitewater State Park.